What's worth doing,
Yeah.
what's not
Yeah.
worth doing. I say no to things. I say no to things that take time, that don't pay, that may interfere with what comes in that will pay. Sometimes I take jobs because I need some money to get me through, So,
Yeah.
so you have to balance all that. But he goes
Yeah,
into a
you
lot of
do. Yeah.
detail. Everybody
But
should listen.
let's hear from the master of who has
Let's
learned
hear
how to
from the
balance.
master. And so, yeah, without further ado, you'll hear some repeats here. Here is Kevin Blackmore. And one more thing, they're not touring anymore after this is their last tour,
Oh, I know.
but they will be doing concerts here and there.
Okay.
So it's not 100% gone. So there will be Buddy
Good.
Wassisname,
Good. Good. Good.
but it won't be massive national tours and stuff like that. So without further ado, Kevin Blackmore. Okay, Kevin, how are you today?
I'm well. I was outside, taking advantage of the mild air this morning and doing things outside. And I got to come in and sit down for this interview. You realize I'm putting up. This is quite a sacrifice to come in and sit down in warm air and on a sofa.
You could have sat outside.
I could have stood outside. Yeah,
Just stand outside on your phone. We have had some nice mild weather though. Yesterday was crazy, and
yeah.
I think it's still like in the pluses here in Lewisport. So I'm hoping it just melts all the rest of the ice.
Just on the zero mark, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see all the ice in my driveway go. If not, I'm going to have to go out and do something about it. So I'm just waiting to see. And it's bright here. It's sunny too. So I don't know what that's all about, but I'll take it. So anyway, it's good to talk to you. I I don't even know where to start. One thing I noticed, I was did want to make a comment. I was doing research for this interview, and looking at Buddy Wassisname and the other fellows, and you in particular, and looking at your career with that group, your cohorts, and all of the success that you've had. And I was thinking, you're probably one of the most successful artistic groups to come out of this province. You've been at it for a heck of a long time, and your popularity does not seem to have waned at all. And a lot of what we do on this podcast is try to, talk to the veterans in the business, and see when we get someone like you on the phone, um, what what do they credit? What do you credit the success of Buddy Wassisname and the other fellows? And is there anything you could tell young people, like if you want to go out and have a career in the arts? Would there be any advice?
Yes, I do have some advice. I just want to address the idea that we've been successful. The success itself, I will admit we have been successful. We've garnered a livelihood out of it. And when I was a young man of 29, and my prospects were few, the fact that I met Wayne Chalk and Ray Johnson, of course, changed my fortunes. And so the first thing I have to do is credit the fact that I wound up with two really incredibly great fellows who were well along and mature, because Ray had 14 years teaching experience and Wayne had 16 years teaching experience by this time. And of course, they had solid careers. They didn't need to change what they were doing. The fact is, we are successful mostly because of a maturity where we were at the time. Ray was 38, Wayne was 36, I was 29 when we started this group. And we knew that we had to approach this thing as a business. And I had come through a lot of different experiences. I'd just come through 3 years with Chris Lauren Elliott. We did a duo called Free Beer. And I did a rock band between the age of 18 and 21, which taught me how to do everything exactly wrong. And I wound up in a country band for a couple of years after that, doing weekends, which taught me everything about how to do business right. And when I went around with Chris Elliott, I learned artistically how to develop as an entertainer, primarily a comic entertainer. And so it was that collection of things which allowed me to be in a place where I could actually entertain people and make a business out of it. Wayne Chalk, almost singularly, is the reason why, as a business, we succeed, because he's one of those Northeast Coast Protestants who knows all about the value of a dollar, and he can smell bad news coming from a long way off. And he has always had a keen nose to keeping us on the straight and narrow when it comes to finances. Then early in the game, we realized we would have to have accountants and lawyers help us get going. And if I had any one piece of business for young people who want to start in the music industry, it would be this: learn bookkeeping. That is the long and short of it. Learn bookkeeping. I always find that the youngsters that I see who are musical have plenty of talent, and they always seem to be entirely drunk on their own abilities and have no trouble whatsoever navigating around musical instruments or their voice. And all of that is a given. You don't need to tell these young people how to do what they do. That's not the question. What most of them have a deficit with is how to manage their money so that they can see what garners them a profit. And there's nothing like a journal and a ledger to show you what you've been doing, whether it garners profit or loss. And bookkeeping doesn't have to be elaborate. You don't have to be an accountant. In my early days when I started, because the boys were teaching, I started doing the books for Buddy Wassisname and the other fellows, though quickly passed it on to a better bookkeeper. But I learned something very elementary. The Federal Business Development Bank at the time used to have a program in which an accountant, a retired accountant usually, would visit your domicile, in my case, in a little house I was living in, and help you set up a set of books. And so this man came. He was a man well into his 70s at the time, and he showed me how to set up an elementary set of books, a ledger, with how to write off deductions in categories starting with A and going through the alphabet. You know, there was advertising, there was business dues and fees, and there was cars, and then there was whatever, as you go on through cars and costume, and you had a little column for every expense that you could foresee. And it was that almost a revelation in the sense in my thinking. I had no realization of any of this before that. And so when we started our business and took it on the road some years later, we had a very clear idea of the idea that every move we made had to pay off. And so we reasoned ways in which to make that happen, and we just executed a plan. There are a few other groups in Newfoundland from the past that I know who were that deliberate with their approach. Great Big Sea is one. But years ago, there was a group called the Carleton Show Band, and they were another. I've not really known too many people who think like the entertainment as business. And it's something which I try to instill in everybody. And my partner, Wayne, too, will almost certainly give you the same advice. Wherever we can, we kind of tell people, you have to think of it as a business, and you have to execute a very deliberate plan about how you go about it. And though that seems on the outside not much in the way of musical advice, that is, in essence, what makes a business work. And your entertainment has to be a business.
That is refreshing. It is actually right down the line with my own personal opinions, and I get sometimes I get a little frustrated because artists, of every kind, every artist that whether it's visual art, who they're painting, or they're writing books, or they're doing music, or whatever their art is, will set their back up against the idea of their success being dependent as much on having the business plan as having, artistic um, abilities and talent. And I want to be recognized for my art, and I don't want to be tangled up in all this whole business thing. And they do themselves a great disservice. I don't know of anyone who is successful in this business who doesn't, or in any of the creative industries, who doesn't have an understanding of that, even if they're not the one to do the business. Um, you know,
Yeah.
they may, get to a point where that's taking too much time. So if you are fortunate enough to move into that where I'm making money and I need to focus on creating and I need someone else to do the really practical business stuff, that's good. But in order to get to that point, I think you really do have to have that early idea that there is a business aspect to it. And if you don't make money, you can't continue to create because, or you can't create where people will enjoy it the same because there's a cost to creating. And and to performing and to, showing work. If you're an artist, a visual artist, you've got to do framing and, so that is very refreshing to hear. And and it's really refreshing to hear from someone who has applied that and made it work. Of course, we can see the results of that, in the success you've had.
There's a nice divide between artisans and artists, and maybe it's not clearly seen, but I find with artisans, and that those are the people who are in the craft industry. They have a much more direct understanding of the idea that what you do has to pay. If you're creating, for argument's sake, you're creating like Don Baker. Don Baker is, in my mind, one of the most singularly successful artists. But she considers herself more an artisan because everything she does, she knows she has to pay. She understands what her market is. She doesn't overplay it. She creates images which are perfectly in line with what people want from her, no more and no less. And she seeks opportunity to incorporate those images in collaborations like she did with my buddy Wayne Chalk, for instance. There's just one when she illustrated the song Saltwater Joys in a 32-page book. But she very clearly understands every step of that, and she knows exactly how much investment to put into it. But you'll find a person like Don, and there are quite a few hundred like her in this province doing similar things. She will spend way more time thinking about it as a business and doing the things necessary to carry it out as business, i.e. the travel and the preparation time, the marketing, the bookkeeping and accounting. All of those things probably absorb more time than her creating of images, That's where there's a separation.
Yeah, she like you guys. Even when she started, it was a very deliberate plan. I'm an artist. I've been painting. I've been drawing. I've been doing this, and she was working at something else and wanted to stay home with her daughter, and thought, I really need to see if I can make this work as a business. And that's how she set up. She became a home-based business in her house. She painted her work, but she also did framing for other people in order to bring money in to continue. And then, of course, eventually, the painting became the bigger moneymaker to the framing. So she just frames her own work now. So she doesn't. But that was an evolution over time. But she is an incredibly successful artist, and none of the business, none of the work she's done to create that success takes anything away from the art she makes, because it is beautiful, it is appealing, it's impactful, and her children's books are very well read and recognizable, and and she's built this from one little self-published book of or images, illustrated book, to now she's doing a book for that is approved by and has the support of the Come From Away people. And so she is a really good example.